Yeah.
I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won.
Yeah. Man.
I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We got a call from Mike today. So we do have some plans. He has a plan to try to get back in the mix, but he is still on assignment. But with that being said, welcome to episode 826 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCUH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer that is, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, let's bring on my co-host, that is none other than Charles Bishop. Charles Bishop, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Doc. You know, not long when these started coming out.
Oh man, you got the cheat code?
I picked up one. I was
man, I'm gonna have to go leave right after the show and go pick mine up. Now, my Campbell just dedicated to Texas, as you know, being here for a long time, is one that I just get mailed to the house.
Oh, nice.
I get to that part where I'm getting with Lindy, but it's something about going into the store, and looking to see every so often if it's there, and then when you get it, you get this almost like Christmas Day feeling when you open your gifts.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I see. With that being said, again, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I mean, a little bit of a downtime, but still a lot of news that's sitting out there for us.
Yeah, it's amazing how much news is going on when we're outside of the traditional cycle. I will give a shout out to North Carolina A&T. All 5 of their track teams that were in and made it to national qualified it in their heats, and they're into the finals. So that's a big deal. We have Southern's Jaguars getting into, as they were in the mix, and a couple of other HBCUs saw with Howard. So it's fascinating to see 4x100s and 4x4s and things of that nature. Shout out to A&T to make it to the finals. That's pretty much a big statement there. Certainly know you're going to get some points when you're able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what that is in the mix. Not necessarily what we saw, I guess it's almost 5-6 years ago now, when we were on the edge of our seats from the standpoint that they were literally in the mix for a men's national championship, ultimately finishing second, I think it was.
Yeah.
Top 3. But that was fascinating to see. With that being said, today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting, educational consulting, and data analytics. Again, with that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to head back to you, Charles. I gave you a little early shout out in terms of making sure, as you said, closing out the academic year. We got one more sport, the national college track and field, that's men's and women's, and I gave you some updates there. With that being said, what direction do you want to go with some of your news updates of the day?
Sure thing. Let's take a look at it as the SWAC announces the 2025-2026 Academic Success Award honors. The SWAC has announced its 2025-26 Academic Success honors. The SWAC Academic Success Award is an award decided based upon each member institution collective ranking in the categories of highest 4-year academic progress rate, highest single-year APR average, and highest graduate success rate. Jackson State claimed the Academic Success Award, finishing with a total of 31 points based upon the recent point scale system used to determine the institutional winner. Texas Southern was right behind them, and Bethune-Cookman had 27 points. Texas Southern 30 points, Bethune-Cookman 27 points to round out the list of the top 3 finishers within the conference.
Good stuff. Academic success. As the dean of HBCU sports, I'm certainly happy when we get a little bit of that mix of the academic side of the house balanced with the athletics. Certainly that's where bread is buttered, as AD would say, in terms of what we talk about. But yeah, to get some love and shout out Alabama State, Jackson State in terms of getting the recognition for academic. Big thing with the conference now, you get a check for that as well, and a trophy. So that's big time. Shout out to Jackson State. They do it all sports and they do it athletically. It's kind of hard to make an argument there when you're doing it on both sides.
It's 2 for 2.
Yeah, it's pretty big in 1 year. I'm not sure if we've seen that done thus far. Shout out to Alabama State, Dr. Jason Cavil as well. And previously, as I said, Jackson State with Ashley Robinson. They 2 of the best in the business as we do our release for our top 5, 6 directors of athletics. They always in the hunt. They've been right there.
Yeah.
Got to give some kudos to Kerry up there at Howard University. I'm sure he's going to be in the mix in terms of what they did athletically this year. And I would be surprised, although the MEAC doesn't necessarily do the Superior Academic Award, that if they did, Howard would most certainly be in the mix for that. I would just surmise, just get
yeah.
I want to go too far out there, but same. Let me go in this direction. According to HBCU Sports, these are the 5 HBCU Division II teams should be on your radar for 2026. I'm going to break it down according to what they said, and then I want to see, Charles, are you in agreement? Any team you want to take off? Any team you want to add? I like when we do, the numbers, 5, because you can always put in the mix. You're talking about some Division II programs out there, if you would, 20 plus, obviously. These are the top 5, at least, in terms of should be on your radar, according to HBCU Sports. Central State. In the first season under head coach Tony Carter, Central State quietly fielded one of the top defensive units in Division II football, ranking highly in multiple national categories. Defenses will always take you far. Some people say defense wins championship. Anybody paying attention to the NBA certainly would say, yeah, if San Antonio would have played a little defense, they might be in a better position they are now.
Oh, boy.
The other side, they are playing pretty good defense, right? The strength of this defense was the ability to force turnovers. Tying for 4th in the country with 28, including a conference high 17 interceptions. The coaches often would tell you that you may have a year where you are bigger in terms of turnovers, particularly interceptions, but they said if you're in those categories, that's not just because the ball is bouncing your way, literally, as football folks would say, and I've even heard you talk about as you do your analysis and play-by-play for games, but it's something that coaches teach.
Yeah.
So that should be something they could continue to do. Obviously, you do need some breaks there, but although Central State will be without 2 key starters in 26, namely Dominique Davis II and Matthias Davis, they boast tremendous depth, which could lead to breakout stars within the unit. Another one is Edward Waters. Jenkins, coach that many of us are familiar with the time he was at Bethune-Cookman, took HBCU by storm, put him in a position to get the Alabama State job, was solid there, really didn't quite do what I'm sure they were expecting him to do based on why they brought him there coming out of Bethune-Cookman, but he's back in the mix. Now, last year he got the job really late. It was before the season, but late in terms of maybe putting in his own staff, putting in his own plays, and I'm sure he had to do a lot of stuff on the fly. They started out really heavy, got a huge win over the number one ranked Virginia Union team. Now he has a little more time. He's in the mix. So what do you think when I talk about Edward Waters in terms of the landscape? Then you have Elizabeth City State moving out of the SIAC. We're going into the CIAA. This is a team that was in the mix. It's been a while since Elizabeth City State has contended for a championship in football, but the 2025 season was a step in the right direction towards that goal. After a rough start, losing the first 4 contests, including 5 of the first 6, the Vikings finished strong by winning their last 3 games to close out with a 4-6 overall record. In 2 of these 3 wins at the end of the year, they scored over 60 points. Let me say that again. 60 points, winning the turnover margin 13-4, which certainly will help you do that. While competing in the conference title is tough, though CIAA Northern Division is a bit ambitious, as they had, moved away from divisional status, top 2. But Elizabeth City, if you look at it from that time, be interesting to see what that looks like. Fayetteville State is a team that is consistently in the championship, right? And I think this upcoming season will be no different. Last season, the Broncos were 1 win away from clinching a spot in CIAA title game, as they are used to. A couple of years before that, they were right there. So they did take a slight step back, but they're in that mix because Johnson C. Smith got it done. Virginia Union has been the king of the conference for sure. Both seeing wholesale changes, though, through respective roster offseason changes. It'll be interesting, can Fayetteville State thrust themselves into that leadership role? Sporting a new offensive and defensive coordinator, respectively, as much as their roster returning in 2026, the Broncos' journey is finished. The job will be a key storyline in the CIAA. Going back to the SIAC to finish out this top five, if you would, or the 5 to keep your eyes on at least, is a logical person will look at Miles' 3-8 record, but we've seen this before. Benedict the year before last. Miles in the mix. They have been one of the pillar programs over the last decade, even with changes of coaches. Can it happen again? We'll see. This is compounded by the fact they started the season 0-6, including losing the first 4 contests by a margin 25 points or more. Now, they're early on. They're not going to get a conference schedule that may allow you to see whether it's major improvement. They're playing a couple of FCS programs. So do take that into fact. It's not about how the Golden Bears started the season, rather how noted, which they ended, winning 3 of their last 5 contests. The big key to their success late in the season was their efficiency, shifting from committed 14 turnovers in the first 6 games to just 7 in the last 5. In addition, Miles' pass defense got sharper, limited 4 of its last 5 opponents to under 200 yards passing. The Golden Bears can be disciplined football as they did in the latter half of the 2025 season. We shall see. So again, let me give you those 5. Central State, Edward Waters, both out of the SIAC. Elizabeth City State and Fayetteville State, both out of the CIAA. And then the 3rd entry, the 5th of our programs listed, was Miles out of the SIAC. WSSU Ram Nation gets into play. It says Fayetteville State University.
Fayetteville Second University.
Yeah, I see. Boy, I tell you, it's cold. So I think he believes Winston-Salem State will be in the mix. Changing of guard there. Be fascinated to see what that looks like in terms of what's going on in Winston-Salem State. But before we do that, Charles, we're going to do the tease. We're going to do a tease, take this first break, come back on the other side, let you talk about this a little bit. Then we'll cover on with a couple of more news updates and see what your thoughts are as we move forward. So let's take our first break and then come back on the other side.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a status, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. Whether you're a student or a lifelong supporter, our gear lets you wear your HBCU story with confidence and style. Because when you wear HBCU Image, you're not just wearing clothes. You're wearing culture. You're wearing pride. You're wearing purpose. HBCU.
If you've ever told yourself, I want to get into real estate but don't know where to start, here's something just for you. From Friday, July 31st to Sunday, August 2nd, the Learn Real Estate Fast Masterclass is coming to McKenzie Office Park in College Park. You'll learn wholesaling, commercial investing, and how to purchase property with zero money or credit. I can tell you, education and access are everything. This masterclass is designed to give you both. Whether you're brand new or ready to level up, this is where you start making real moves. Enjoy free lunch, free study materials, and receive a certification of completion. So don't wait. Seats are filling fast. Do not sit on the sidelines while others build wealth. Take that first step toward ownership and legacy. Get your tickets now at learnrealestatefast.com or tickpick.com. For more information, call 678-859-3303. Master the market, build your legacy, secure your future today.
From cancer care to accidental injuries to cardiac care, we all know that there are times that you can't control what happens in your life. But with Globe Life Family Heritage, you can be prepared to weather the storm when it comes. Call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com. With over 25 years of serving communities, Dr. Beverly Eagles Rogers is here to help you and your family through difficult times. Dr. Beverly takes pride in Globe Life being one of the few companies that returns 100% of premiums to clients that stay healthy. So for more information, call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. So without further ado, we'll get off this tease. Told you about the top five. Charles, which direction are you going and why?
I think out of the five, I think three are definite contenders that I think you should keep an eye on, and two that got to prove it to me. Let me start with Central State. As mentioned, a tough defense, and what I find very interesting to me about Central State is when you sort of create those type of turnovers, 17 interceptions last year, it creates a culture. So you got a team that will be coming back hungry. Interestingly, September 5th, they got a matchup against Grambling, and I think that'll be a fun game to kind of sit back and watch and kind of see where both teams are comes that early September matchup. Same thing with Edward Waters. Of course, last year they turned heads, that big game with Virginia Union. They also, September 5th, they have a matchup with Jackson State. And we know Brian Jenkins, he knows how to put points up on the board. So it'll be an early test for Jackson State's defense in the beginning of the season. And then the other team that I think, it mentions it, Fayetteville State. Is this their year that they sort of get through from what Ram Nation calls Fayetteville Second State? So it'll be very interesting to see can they fight through and get over that hump, because they've been in the mix for so long now. It'll be trying to sit back and see, do the Broncos make that move this upcoming season? Elizabeth City State and both Miles, they still have to prove it to me. They came on towards the end of last year, but, are we going to see the Miles that we saw 2-3 years ago that was, right there in the mix things with the SIAC that really had that dominant defense and was really one of those teams that you were watching for week in, week out? They kind of fell off real tough last season, wholesale roster changes, things of that nature. So can Miles get back to where they once was? And Elizabeth City State, they're not a team that we kind of talk about on a consistent in the mix. Are they a team to watch? There's always that one team that comes out of nowhere, so they could be that team this upcoming season.
Good stuff. Good talk. Good stuff in terms of which direction you're going there. Obviously, SIAC got back to the football business last year, particularly in terms of the head-to-head unofficial SIAC CIAA trophy that we talk about and like to discuss. But the last couple of years, it was raining over in the CIAA, which for the longest was basketball country, if you would. Still one of the best out there when you talk about their basketball tournament, the CIAA, that is. But if you look at the two early thoughts, and can the CIAA bounce back, or do you think the SIAC is maybe going to hold on to the dominance in terms of the two conferences, and even showed out in terms of what the SIAC was able to do with the number of the teams they got into the playoffs?
Good question, because one of those cogs that was rolling in the CIAA was Virginia Union, and now that's a huge hole to fill with in terms of their running game. Edward Waters, I think, is that team to really kind of keep your eye on in the SIAC. Not the traditional power, but we saw that they had a lot of talent on their team last year. They could put up a lot of points, and I'm looking for big things for Edward Waters this upcoming season.
Certainly. Let's switch gears a little bit. I really didn't get a chance to get your thoughts on this. And we're still talking about a little bit of the news of the day. Obviously, we're going to backtrack just a little bit. We did put this out there, but everybody got to share their perspective. I wanted to take a deeper dive because I did a little tease, which is the Tennessee State and Jackson State rivalry. In that conversation, you went in on it, talking about John Merritt Classic. Obviously, one of the big news is they had to move the facility. It's going to be played at Vanderbilt for Frostbank Stadium. The renovations that they've done to that stadium are really going to be nice, so that part will be pleasant. They've reduced the size of it, so tickets in a lot of ways could be in demand, so that's fascinating to see what that looks like. They're going to play it in the evening. Hadn't heard television news, but the rights of the OVC and Tennessee State go to ESPN. I wouldn't be surprised if they pick it up, but we'll see what that means if that is the case. But it'll be a late game. While it may be on ESPN, one of the family networks, the big one is on ABC with the MEAC SWAC Challenge. We will be there. We were hoping maybe we could do a double-double. The game be played early or played on the Sunday, even though I know for a lot of folks, whatever you do, if you move it to Sunday, make sure you don't play it at 11 a.m. It's going to work. But I'm just saying, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I understand is don't play it on Sunday. For me, it doesn't matter. I'll be in the suites. I'll be there. So I was fine with the move. I'm not.
A lot of consternation. Yeah,
what everybody is, in a gather for. But I should say for it. But with that being said, one angle that I wanted to talk about here is the Midwestern Conference days, the Midwestern Athletic Conference as it was changed to. And one thing that I picked up is Tennessee State is probably the program that really carried, if you would, the Midwestern Conference, not just because of the championships they had in there, but also in terms of being one of the programs that kind of started up that conference in 1934. It started in 1926. So I want to be clear on that in terms of the dates when you talk about 1926 to essentially 1970. I'm not sure people realize just how long this conference was in existence. And for the longest period of time, Tennessee State was one of the pillar institutions. And so while a lot of people see and hear about Tennessee State being an independent, I'm not sure they realize that was in between time in regards to what that looks like. But it was the Midwestern Conference, if you would, from 1926 to 1970 was the overall time. But from 1962 to 1963, and then later was coined as the Midwestern Conference from 1964 to 1970. And even in some formations, you hear it as the Midwestern Athletic Association or the Mid-Western Athletic Association, where many of the names it went by. People that may not understand the history A lot of that is verbiage because of how it appeared in the black newspapers, Negro newspapers, if you would call it at that time. And sometimes they would abbreviate or take license in terms of the conference names. People may not realize it, but the SWAC has the same history. It had a different name at the beginning. And again, I'll tease that out and share that at the appropriate time. Well, I thought it was appropriate to share it there. But Jackson State was in the Midwestern Conference, if you would, from 1952 to 1958, short period of time. But they had head-to-head matchups with Tennessee State. And as we talked about the John Merritt Classic, obviously a lot of people are very aware that he coached at Jackson State, led them to a national championship, conference championship. But one of the conference championships that he had while he was at Jackson State was in the Midwestern Conference. People kind of look over that in a lot of ways because SWAC is the thing now, and it engulfs, it seems like everything, which for SWAC fans is a good thing. But historically, I did want to kind of get your framework. Do you remember the Midwestern days and matchups with Tennessee State specific to a conference matchup versus an independent matchup between two big rival schools, or then later what came the classic matchups, which everybody is familiar?
I've heard a lot of stories, especially with the Midwestern Conference days. My late great cousin Stanley P. Green played for Jackson State during that time, and he always talked about, Jackson State, we being the underdog, being the little brother, so to speak, to Tennessee State. And during that time, Big John was at Jackson State, 1952 to 1962. He really worked hard in terms of recruiting a lot of athletes that came to Jackson from Kentucky. There's a pipeline of athletes during that time that came to Jackson State from Kentucky. Future basketball coach Paul Covington came to Jackson State from Kentucky. But, it was always trying to...
Not to jump in there, but just to close that out, people don't realize a lot of that was connected with Kentucky State. That was part of the same conference in terms of the Midwestern Conference at the time, along with Lincoln, Missouri, Central State. They had memberships in the Midwestern Conference. And so even though some of them stopped playing football, you still had the basketball rivals that were huge when you talk about what Tennessee State was doing and Kentucky State was doing with their basketball programs as well.
Yeah, and so I've heard a lot of stories. Roy Curry is a former quarterback at Jackson State, came to Jackson State in 1959, but he talked about, kind of the dawning of the new age of Jackson State football really starts around that time, and then they finally break through when they come over to the SWAC and then they win a national championship in 1962, knocking off Florida A&M. But Big John Merritt, prior to him, T.B. Ellis, really was, sort of the patriarch of Jackson State football, and John Merritt took it somewhere else. And really, you saw just this influx of talent start coming to Jackson State, and Jackson State becomes a power in the 60s. My growing up in Jackson, I've grown up with so many Tennessee State, legends in and around Jackson, because when Big John left Jackson and went to Nashville, he brought a lot of talent with him from Mississippi, from Jackson especially. So, I always have grown up with that rivalry. I remember going up to Nashville, going to play Tennessee State up there. There's always the infamous game I remember distinctly in the 80s where Big John purposely brought his home uniforms and forced Jackson State to send the equipment manager back to campus to pick up the visiting uniforms that was all head game. But it delayed the game for, a good 2 hours because there was this battle of wheels in terms of who's going to change. And Big John was like, well, we didn't bring visitor jerseys. Sorry, this is what we got. So they had to change that out. So it was, I still remember that. A lot of Jackson State alums can tell you about, waiting on this game to start. So it was, it's always been a fun rivalry that both teams have had runs. Whereas Jackson State would have a good run over Tennessee State for a while, and Tennessee State had a nice run over Jackson State for a while. Currently, Jackson State, until the rivalry stopped, they had a nice little run over Tennessee State. But it's just a tremendous long-standing rivalry. Always one that you enjoyed. Southern Heritage Classic for all those years. But I do remember taking the road trip up to Nashville and Tennessee State coming down to Jackson.
Now, here's another one people may not realize is that Tennessee State and Jackson State were both in the SIAC. Now, this is the rub. They were not in there at the same time. Jackson State, for as much as we like to put it out there, they were in there for 1 year.
Yeah.
Tennessee State was in there 1925, 26, 27, and 28, 29 in terms of the years. Time FAMU was in there. So interesting to see that connection that you have all three of these teams at one time that were in the SIAC. But the other thing is that they realize when they think about the Alcorn State and Jackson State rivalry is the fact that, it's huge in the SWAC. They did not join the SWAC at the same time.
Right.
But they were also conference foes back in the South Central Athletic Conference for a period of time. Jackson State had 2 stints in that conference from 1935 to 1940, and then again from 1947 to 1950 before they went independent for a year and then ended up joining the Midwestern Conference before what we all recognize with both of them coming into the SWAC in 1958 and then 1960 plus for the Braves a couple years later. So just a little bit of history and fascination. I always go back and revisit, and unique how conference churning changed things, and you have rivalries. And people oftentimes think about these rivalries in a very modern state. In some cases, they go back to different ways in terms of what they look like. But as much as you hear about Tennessee State being an independent school and not much about Midwestern State, many people may not realize that there was several years where Jackson State was an independent program in between a little bit of the conference hopping or churning, as I like to say, that they did. So wanted to share just a little bit on that and your perspective of what ultimately is going to be a tremendous matchup in a lot of ways. It'll be interesting to see what's going to go down this year. Let's take our next break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll get into a little bit about the SWAC. We'll get into this partnership that has a lot of folks. And I wanted to give a little more perspective of what that looks like, maybe have a dialogue and discussion on that. Then we'll find a way to twist and turn and move away from some of this football that we had in this last segment and turn it to basketball with the updates of a new conference format. We'll share a little bit about what that looks like and give you another conference that plays a similar format of conference and get what Charles' thoughts are in terms of the updates where regular season has just become a lot more interesting in regards to be able to finish in their first or second seed. Just as a little tease, you get an automatic berth to the semifinals. But not to be outdone, the 3 and 4 seeds become pretty important as well. See if that's a good move or not for the SWAC from your perspective. See what the lab listeners think. And we'll be back again after this next break.
From cancer care to accidental injuries to cardiac care, we all know that there are times that you can't control what happens in your life. But with Globe Life Family Heritage, you can be prepared to weather the storm when it comes. Call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com. With over 25 years of serving communities, Dr. Beverly Eagles Rogers is here to help you and your family through difficult times. Dr. Beverly takes pride in Globe Life being one of the few companies that returns 100% of premiums to clients that stay healthy. So for more information, call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com.
If you've ever told yourself, I want to get into real estate but don't know where to start, here's something just for you. From Friday, July 31st to Sunday, August 2nd, the Learn Real Estate Fast Masterclass is coming to McKenzie Office Park in College Park. You'll learn wholesaling, commercial investing, and how to purchase property with zero money or credit. I can tell you, education and access are everything. This masterclass is designed to give you both. Whether you're brand new or ready to level up, this is where you start making real moves. Enjoy free lunch, free study materials, and receive a certification of completion. So don't wait. Seats are filling fast. Do not sit on the sidelines while others build wealth. Take that first step toward ownership and legacy. Get your tickets now at learnrealestatefast.com or tickpick.com. For more information, call 678-859-3303. Master the market, build your legacy, secure your future today.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a state, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. Whether you're a student or a lifelong supporter, our gear lets you wear your HBCU stories with confidence and style. Because when you wear HBCU Image, you're not just wearing clothes. You're wearing culture. You're wearing pride. You're wearing purpose. HBCU.
This is Ryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSU Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSM Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
So we're inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I'm going to read over this, Charles, so get into it a little bit. Because I'm going to go off of this article that I thought did a really good job of breaking this down. You know, I touched on it a little bit when they first announced it, and then I had a dialogue with a couple of people that asked me the particulars, and I told them, hey, look at this. To some degree, when you think about, you know, the SEC and the partnership what they have with ESPN about, you know, rights there, obviously they get a direct amount, but there's also a percentage in terms of the partnership deal, similar to what you see with Big Ten and Fox, which actually did it first before you see more of the percentage partnership, which is slightly different even with the SEC and the ABC. But it gives you a little framework. But AJ Niles on June 5th wrote about a 7-minute read. We won't go that detailed in it, but we'll read some of it word for word. When he opens up, he talks about the Southwestern Athletic Conference announced on June 3rd that the SWAC TV, the conference's free streaming platform, has joined Mercurius Media Capital, MMC, as you see on your screen there, as a strategic limited partner in the firm's Media for Equity Venture Fund. The deal is structured differently from a conventional media rights or advertising agreement, and the distinction matters. And he's exactly right. A lot of people are familiar, as we've seen the conference and multiple conferences in terms of HBCUs and some general, where they get into a more advertising agreement versus conventional media rights, which we see all the time as of late. In the standard advertising arrangement, a media platform sells its ad inventory to brands for cash. The cash flow to the platform, which can be then distributed or reinvested. Distributed, that's when you think about the money that goes back to institutions as part of the disbursement that we talk about in terms of what schools are getting, which we've seen in the conference is almost about $1 million per school, which is continuing to the trajectory of that essentially for all the schools in itself. Continuing here, a media for equity structure works differently, however. The media platform provides advertising inventory to a firm's portfolio's companies, and instead of cash, receives an equity stake in those companies. The value the platform holds is not liquid until a portfolio company has an exit event, meaning an acquisition, initial public offering, or another transaction that converts equity to cash. A little more here. Under the agreement, SWAC TV advertising inventory will be used by companies in MMC's portfolio to build brand awareness and drive customer acquisition. The SWAC, as a strategic limited partner in the fund, holds equity positions in those companies. MMC, which launched in December 2023, has $235 million in media capital commitment and has deployed approximately $40 million across its portfolio to date. The firm's other media platform partners include Sinclair Broadcast Group, Televisa, Univision, and A+E Global Media. As we know a lot about the SWAC audience, we know that it's loyal. We know in a lot of ways the fluency of that crowd, but he gets in a little bit and talks about it directly. He says the audience being offered, the announcement frames the SWAC audience as a central asset in the deal. The conference reports 1 million active alumni, 70,000 current students, and a fan base spread across 6 states. MMC's announcement specifies that the audience is 87% African American, 67% college educated, and 64% homeowners, meaning they have equity in terms, if nothing else, at least their home. The announcement also notes that this is a community that mainstream, quote unquote, I should say, mainstream advertising has historically undervalued, end quote. That's not a new observation. Research has documented for years that Black audiences receive a fraction of the advertising investment the numbers and purchasing power should command. African Americans represent 13% of the U.S. population, but have historically received roughly 2% of the total national and ed spending directed at Black interested media. According to Nielsen data cited in a 2022 report on minority-owned media, Black buying power has grown faster than white buying power over the past 2 decades. None of that translated into proportional ad spend. The CPM rates, what advertisers pay per 1,000 impressions on Black interest digital platforms, have consistently been lower than those on comparable non-minority platforms. That gap is the background for this deal. So the question is, what closing the gap actually looks like? Paying cash for access to the audience is one answer, which is more of the traditional framework. A media for equity arrangements is another. In this structure, brand reaches the audience without paying cash up front. They pay with equity in their companies instead. The SWAC receives ownership stakes in MMC's portfolio companies in return. Both sides get something. What they get and when they are different things in terms of when they may receive that. But again, this is a long-term play. Go ahead, Charles.
Well, and I wanted to go to the point that you made about both sides get something. And my question is this: how big is it for the SWAC to have direct ownership of its distribution?
I think that's everything. You can't do this deal without having a significant, large ownership of your media rights. And what's nice about this is they have such a large amount of the ownership rights, but they still had the ability to have some of it in the more traditional fashion, where they have it with ESPN/ABC, if you would, Walt Disney Network. And then they also have with HBCU Go. So they have the best of both worlds. They get some direct advertising, cash with those dudes. They play those platforms. They're on ESPN, which is the global leader. So you get that investment side, which is brilliant in terms of partnering with them. So you still keep your platform or some of your stuff there. You have an HBCU Go that goes straight to cable. Does have a streaming component. And obviously it's invested directly in terms of what they do. And then you have a large portion that you have on SWAC TV that you own, which over a period of time becomes more valuable, particularly when you think about the history of the conference for over 100 plus years, what that looks like. So it's an excellent point when you get into that. So let me skip down here a little further and get into more meat of this. What's the conference gets? Quote, the Southwestern Athletic Conference is extremely excited to partner with Mercurius Media Capital as we continue to expand the reach and impact of the SWAC TV. This deal is with SWAC TV which is important also to understand, which gets back to your question you just asked. How much important is it to have your own product attached to you? Again, you don't have a SWAC TV if you don't own that. If all of it's done to traditional media, where it all goes there, i.e. SEC. You see, in a lot of ways, splitting it up, like you see with the Big Ten, has paid back bigger dividends in terms of what they get there. And we'll see over a period of time between those two groups which model means the most. But you see a little bit there, the ability to navigate the space where you see the mindset of what SWAC Commissioner Dr. Charles McCullin is thinking about, and the presidents that have agreed with supporting this model. Quote, by aligning with MMC, we are further positioning SWAC TV for long-term growth. It's important to talk about long-term growth while creating meaningful opportunities that will enhance the visibility and value of Southwestern Athletic Conference and the communities we proudly represent. MMC founder partner Nayush Puri described the SWAC as having, quote, built gravity over a century, end quote, and called SWAC TV, quote, a premium digital first sandbox for brands, end quote. So they know that you go with brands and they go directly to the consumer, and the consumer that is very loyal. Many people have understood for the longest period of time when you talked about a Daytona 500 and the race car is how much those fans were attached to the brands associated with Race Driver, and they had some of the highest fan attachment. But you can see that here with the SWAC in terms of just how attached they are with the SWAC. We see that with social media platforms and how many people gravitate to that, and how many more talk sports shows are associated with the SWAC as compared to the independents and even NEAC, CIAA, and SIAC. It's different. You see those branded as D2, they partner, which is a good thing, but it shows you a little different between the space when you talk about that. Follow-up question there, Charles?
Yeah, and I think this is a question that is perfect for you to explain, because in one of my text groups, one of the questions that was asked was this Media for Equity Venture Fund. Is that a new concept, or is that something that is coming on the horizon now that the SWAC is utilizing to broaden SWAC TV?
It's relatively a new concept. You know, venture capital in itself is a pretty new partnership, if you would, you know, and it's really sprung out. Now, I want to be clear that venture partnership is different than venture capital, where you basically invest and take over a company or a component of the company. You see that for those that may have heard about Utah out of the Big 12 getting into the venture capitalists. And people have some concern on that, rightfully so, because a lot of times what you hear about venture capitalists, that they go in there and they can crevice it out and really turn it over in such a way that it becomes just a money-driven platform. And you see that to some degree with Utah, where they just talked about having layoffs for the athletic department. But a investment, which is similar to what you heard with the Big 12 announcement when they said they were going to have capital partners with institutions, essentially where they could be provided a loan, and then they would provide that in some ways, maybe doing investment and being able to do facility upgrades and stuff like that. Now, most of the Big 12 schools turned it down because they had their own access to capital that they believe they could get their hands on and maybe get it with a little more control and a cheaper rate because they're doing it through the institution. But this is different because it's an investment within the partnership of an outside organization. This doesn't tie any athletic department other than the non-rights that they have to the broadcast rights that they're given over to the SWAC, which in the SWAC entails is giving access to MMC to be able to share that in terms of with their portfolio, where the assets that they have associated with SWAC TV allows them to invest in a portfolio of a multi-million-dollar company that is similar to what you see. Some people think about their retirement investment opportunities, where you see the growth there. Now, it's not fail-safe. nothing in anything is fail safe, but it is relatively safe when you talk about these type of companies that you invest in. And you've seen some of the other businesses that are partnering with them in terms of Sinclair, which people have heard about in terms of what they do on the media cycle. But let me give you these last two paragraphs that I think will kind of close things out for people before we take our last break and talk a little bit about the basketball. But the specific terms of the equity arrangements, including what percentage of MMC funds the SWAC holds as a limited partner, what valuation was placed on the ad inventory exchange, and what conditions governing the conference's ability to realize returns on that equity were not disclosed in the announcement. And I want everybody to know that that is normal. That is the process. SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten does not disclose their business transactions. As a nonprofit, they do provide a 440 sheet, which is the SWAC does as well. So you can get that off of tax returns and get some idea. And then you have investigative reporters that go in and may get some people to give you a overall framework of the value of the deal. And at some point, you'll probably get some people that are able to get a little bit of that information from the SWAC. But I think it's important for folks to point out that you don't see the SEC, the Big 12, ACC, the Big 10, or even other G6 conferences or FCS conferences just telling you openly what their media deal. And there's a reason for that. It's not just that some people think they're trying to hide it. It's for the fact that that's proprietary and there's value in that. And when you're doing your deals, you don't want the open market to know what your value is when you go in a negotiation, because any smart business you're negotiating with is now going to lowball you based on what they know you are. So yes, you provide them some framework, but it gives you some area for your negotiation. So no conference, no professional organization is going to give you directly in terms of their value portfolio. Even corporations don't do that. They give you what they, in terms of your investors, so you know some basic frameworks for those corporations that you can invest in. But businesses are not out there giving their proprietary information, or if they would, that's why they sue for it and keep it so hard, because you literally have value in that in itself. And if you're not careful and it gets into the wrong hands, it can put you in a negative business portfolio. So I think that's important to share with folks. Just because you don't know it or a company is going to tell you out there, it's not just because they're hiding something in terms of not wanting you to know any negative things. Yes, they are protective of their investments in their portfolio and do not want it for the world to see in regards to what they do. Again, you do get the revenue updates and general portfolios. You can go get that. That's open to the public. And if you have a background, you get a better understanding of what that looks like. And you still can do comparisons to other conferences. So I wanted to kind of end it there, but I wanted to share again with this excellent article called SWAC TV joins Mercurius Media Capital as a strategic limited partner. Here's what that means. You can go to HBCU Sports. They do a pretty good job on it too. But this is one of the best ones out there I've seen. Again, this was written by AJ Niles. It's on data-driven HBCUs. They have a lot of good information out there where they actually take the federal reports of athletic departments and what they report to the federal. So you can go in there and look at what they do for conference member institutions about their athletic departments, so you can get some comparison data of how one team really looks against another team. Now, be careful, because there's no requirements of exactly how institutions have to report different things. They have to have a general reporting body. So some degree is kind of challenging to compare apple to apple, but it gives you some ideas of what things you can compare. So I think that's important. Took a lot of time in that, but I wanted to really get in that. Again, we're in the summer. We get a little more time to take the deeper dive into the business side of this. So I wanted to do that. Let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side have a little more fun and get back into just the fisticuffs, if you would, and get some ideas, people's thoughts on the new format for the SWAC basketball tournament. They're going back to 10. Remember, 2 years ago they were at 10, but even though they're going back to that 10, not the 8 that we've learned to know for a long period of time, but they're removing the 12, going to the 10, but this is a different format of the 10, so listen up and see what your thoughts there. We'll be right back after this.
If you've ever told yourself, I want to get into real estate but don't know where to start, here's something just for you. From Friday, July 31st to Sunday, August 2nd, the Learn Real Estate Fast Masterclass is coming to McKenzie Office Park in College Park. You'll learn wholesaling, commercial investing, and how to purchase property with zero money or credit. I can tell you, education and access are everything. This masterclass is designed to give you both. Whether you're brand new or ready to level up, this is where you start making real moves. Enjoy free lunch, free study materials, and receive a certification of completion. So don't wait. Seats are filling fast. Do not sit on the sidelines while others build wealth. Take that first step toward ownership and legacy. Get your tickets now at learnrealestatefast.com or tickpick.com. For more information, call 678-859-3303. Master the market, build your legacy, secure your future today.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter. From cancer care to accidental injuries to cardiac care, we all know that there are times that you can't control what happens in your life. But with Globe Life Family Heritage, you can be prepared to weather the storm when it comes. Call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com. With over 25 years of serving communities, Dr. Beverly Eagles Rogers is here to help you and your family through difficult times. Dr. Beverly takes pride in Globe Life being one of the few companies that returns 100% of premiums to clients that stay healthy. So for more information, call Dr. Beverly Eagle Rogers at 877-300-8269 or visit the website at globelifefamilyheritage.com.
For over 30 years, HBCU Image has been more than just an apparel store. We've been a movement, a statement, a legacy. We celebrate the pride, the purpose, and the culture that make historically black colleges and universities legendary. HBCU Image, a Kenny T's company.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We have none other than Professor Bishop here breaking it down and his thoughts. Let's get back into this latest announcement. SWAC announces the new basketball tournament format beginning in 2027. Listen to this, because this is different. Now, obviously, 10 teams moving from 12. That was one difference a little bit. We've seen that before, though, 10 teams literally just 2 years ago. But with that being said, the Southwestern Athletic Conference has announced the adoption of new basketball tournament formats that will debut beginning with the 2027 SWAC men's and women's basketball tournament. That is next year, the year coming up. The SWAC men's and women's basketball working group, consisting of league head coaches and administrators, recommended the new format that will now feature the league's top 10 teams at the conclusion of the regular season play. Now, I'll set this up a little bit. I want to give a shout out to Carlos Brown. He got Southern's basketball coach, Johnson on the show, and he alluded to this a little bit, that this format was likely coming. He didn't say it was. He said they still had to be at the basketball, that it needed to be voted on and ratified, but he thought it had a good chance that it was going to happen. Well, guess what? Shout out to Carlos getting that nugget out there to break the news in a little bit. But next thing is, under this revised format, top 2 seeds in each tournament bracket will receive buys directly into the semifinal round. All right. So, with that being said, seeds number 2 and 3, 3 and 4 will advance directly to the quarterfinals round, while seeds number 5 and 6 will receive buys into the second round. The tournament will begin with first round contests featuring the number 8 seed versus the number 9 seed and the number 7 seed versus the number 10 seed. Winners of those contests will advance to face number 5 and number 6 in that second round that we talked about. Quarterfinal matchups will feature the number 4 seed against the winner coming out of that number 5 seed round side of the bracket, if you would, and the number 3 seed against the winner coming out from the number 6 side of the bracket. The semifinal round will then see the number 1 seed face the winner of the number 4 seed of the bracket, while the number 2 seed will meet the winner of the number 3 side of the bracket, which means the winner of that will face off in the championship game to earn the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. The SWAC men's and women's basketball working group will continue to assess overall viability, growth opportunities, and long-term sustainability of basketball across the conference while evaluating additional enhancements to the championship experience. Additional information regarding tournament dates, game times, and ticket details will be announced at a later date. As we get into the season, I would imagine. Obviously, another part of this is Charles teased this out on SWAC TV, of all things, during the golf tournament, in a lot of ways, that there would be a working group in terms of this. And now we see what the working group brought to the table. It was approved by the coaches, senior women administrators, the ADs, and finally ratified by the presidents and chancellors of the conference. And here we go, Charles. Before I turn it over and give you thoughts, I did want to say that there is another conference that has done this format, and as Carlos brought it out there, I alluded to what an 18 conference look like when you send a team to the first 2 teams to the semifinals with 8 teams, which what we might see next year, because remember, there's thoughts that it will go to 8 teams next year, which was always out there, but got a little time before that's ratified. But the WAC has this similar format, and this is basically what you see from the SWAC. And so a lot of coaches see different models out there. I also teased out, as I said, the OVC does the 18 bracket. You have Southland that does another format that I showed that could work for 10 teams, more and stuff like that. And so I just kind of put that out there as well, but wanted to share that. Now, Charles, go ahead. Let's wrap their heads around this. Where are you with this thought process?
I get the thought process in rewarding the regular season, in that you have the first and second seed who essentially get the bye to the semifinal. But for me, the beauty of postseason basketball is the underdog going up against, the David versus Goliath. So those are what foster the memories for me in terms of, taking on the Goliath. Now, Goliath will probably beat your head in, 29 times out of 30, but it's that one time that you remember, and I just want to see the matchup. Because to me, although you've rewarded the regular season, your performance in the regular season, you ducking smoke. once you get to the postseason. So that's the way I look at it. You know, I love to see David versus Goliath in postseason basketball.
The only thing I will say this does not negate the Goliath, right? In terms of being taken down. It just takes longer for them to get there.
Yeah.
To take them down. Previously, we'd see it in the top 8 teams, or even in the format we've seen with 12. You've seen that in the quarterfinals where you had the 8 match up with the number 1 seed. The 8th seed is still going to get a bid, and in this case, a 9 and 10. And so they can win. And just like the 8th seed won it all last year, Prairie View A&M University, just want to acknowledge that again, winning the 2025-2026 SWAC men's basketball tournament and a first 4 game in the NCAA tournament, just to make sure people remember that and recall from the memory. But back to the discussion, I'm sorry. But I will say that you still have the opportunity to have that matchup. It still would have happened, but instead of being in the quarterfinals, Charles, it would have been just 1 round later in the semifinals. And I would add that it would have been even bigger if it happened then versus happening in the quarterfinals.
But I think the mouth drop is that 1 seed going down in the quarterfinals. That's and for everything to just hit perfect. That's true. That's the one that flips everybody's head. Like, oh my God, did you see who got put out? You know, that's the beauty of postseason basketball for.
I can't argue with that. It does allow it not to happen as early. Now you have to wait for the opportunity to happen. But I do like this part of it. And you alluded to this, and you made sure that people understood that you understand that this is about giving the regular season champion, and for that matter, the 2nd seed, and they could be co-champions for that.
Yeah,
it gives them the opportunity to take advantage of what they did in the regular season. I will say this, though, while a lot of people like that idea, what I've tried to tell folks is just because you won the regular season doesn't mean that you're the best team to play in the tournament. Injuries happen. I think Bethune-Cookman, without a doubt, was the regular season champion because all of the work they did early in the conference play. And they were able to hang on, even though they had some tough losses at the end. They had did so much work early that they were able to win that regular season. But regardless of when they were seeded, they were not the same team, and theirs was not necessarily an injury, which we thought earlier. But regardless if it was an injury or a player getting taken off the bench outside of their control, that was not the same team. That was not the same team.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, your best team, which is what most people's argument is of why you would like this format, is you want to send your best team to the tournament. My argument has always been that we forget just because you won the regular season doesn't mean you're the best team.
Yeah.
The team that Texas Southern came out of the 8th seed. You could argue that folks that really followed all the games understood that Texas Southern, as a team that had all their parts, was a really good team. It just happened that year that they had a lot of injuries, which did not allow them to perform really well in the regular season. But when they got everybody back, they were to that level of a team, and then you saw it take off in the tournament. And people were just saying that's what Texas Southern does in the tournament. But I'm not sure enough people really understood the reason they were able to do that in the tournament was the fact that they got all their pieces back in their lineup healthy because they sat them out so much on the season versus other teams that had great talented players, but a lot of them were hurt because they played through some of those nagging injuries and just didn't have enough. When you talk about the 3-4 day format of a tournament where you're playing on and off and you don't get a chance to maybe recuperate some when you have essentially a week to play 2 games. Does that make any sense when I bring that tournament, that format of understanding that while that way I do agree that upsets can happen, and oftentimes, sometimes they're just purely upsets, but other times it's because the team was really good. And another example was that Prairie View this year.
Dangerous
Prairie
18.
View had injuries during the season.
Yeah.
And people just kind of washed it off and said, oh, that's Prairie View. Rightfully so, because the last couple of years they hadn't been very talented in terms of showing in wins and losses. But this year was different. You saw them at times where you said, man, this is a really good team if you were watching matchups. And even the games they lost with some of those players that were out were relatively close teams. So you knew if they could get everybody back, that's why I said very early, and it wasn't just because I'm a fan of Prairie View, is that I understood what I saw and the fact I knew that they were getting those key pieces back. And they had bought into the idea that they wanted to play it out. So that's the argument. While I do like the way that you appreciate it, I don't think it changes the I gotcha, idea of the tournament where the team that has the lower seed kind of gets it done. I think that still can happen in this format. It just happens a little later in the tournament than it has in the past.
Understood.
With that being said, I think we wrap it up, call it a show. Great dialogue. We've done it for the week. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. The Lower Lab listeners, I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, gave you some business things to think about. I asked you for your homework. I didn't see the homework in the chat, so a little disappointed. The homework is supposed to be front and center at the front desk. When I walk in the room, I will not ask for it. I will just give you your grade of F squared. And I know the lab listeners are A+ students, so we will do better next go around. Make sure you have your homework in the chat as it's supposed to be done. Do not wait for the professors to ask for it. Put it in there. Right, y'all?
There you go. All day.
Thank you. Again, I am Dr. Kenyatta, Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watch and Charles Bishop. Again, I want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watch and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. You know the drill. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's on Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. One on Facebook, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Lecture?
Dismissed.